Wow, look at this place.
I know. It's not as nice as I thought it was gonna be.
No.
Oh,
Dude, look. Look.
hey there, little guy.
Did we wake you?
My name is Kyle.
And my name is Cody. Thank you for welcoming us in your village.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, he can speak American? Oh, wow. Are you sure?
We're from a church in America.
Yeah, like Jesus.
Have you ever heard of Fort Lauderdale?
We heard you don't have a front door and that your roof is broke. So we brought you a bag of candy.
Yeah, we also brought a guy that plays guitar and can kind of sing, so we can sing songs for you later.
Yeah. Hey, do you play soccer? This is an American sport.
Football?
It's very fun. Here you go, guy. Hey, buddy, can we take a picture with you?
For Instagram.
Perfect. Do you have another shirt? Like maybe one that's cleaner?
It's fine, we can crop it.
Okay,
crop it.
yeah. Okay, ready? All the
glory goes to God.
Perfect. In the thick of it, hashtag the first shall be last.
Hashtag harvest is plentiful.
Hashtag harvest is plentiful. Oh, this is gonna be dope. Kimberly's gonna love this.
She's gonna have to date you now.
Right?
So is there like more excursions around here, do you know of? Like we could do?
Yeah, I was like hoping for like maybe like parasailing or like maybe piggybacking on like the back of a dolphin, you know, like fun stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's gotta be like a Top Golf or something.
Yeah,
around
do you have like maybe like an information center? Actually, do you have the Wi-Fi? We could just location service kind of thing. Oh, is that hut your house? Oh, buddy, I slept in an RV once, like for a week on a camping trip. So I totally understand the things you go through. The struggle is real, little buddy.
Have you ever seen someone hit the gritty?
Oh, this is gonna blow your mind. Hit it, go. Check that out, isn't that awesome? That's so fun. We do that in America.
It's a dance we do.
Do you dance here?
Do you want to watch your very first TikTok? Wait.
He's funny.
He's a really
Just
funny
wait,
guy.
Wait for it.
It's kind of there's kind of more of a context.
Yeah,
to
maybe
it.
he doesn't understand the language.
If you lived in America, you would get it. We'll explain it to you later, maybe.
Can we send that to you? Do you have iPhone?
Yeah. What's your AirDrop? Do you have AirDrop on?
Nothing's popping up. Dude, I wish I had a McDonald's Sprite you could try.
Oh my goodness.
McDonald's Sprite in America is crazy.
Your face would be.
You're like, what is that? It's so fun.
I know it. Oh, dude, you're not gonna believe this. Jacob just fell down a well.
That's hilarious.
We gotta go.
Little buddy, we gotta go see this. But here's a Twizzler.
Have fun.
You can take two. All right. See
Love you.
Love you. We're praying. You think
Dude.
it's okay?
Dude, the cruise is gonna be sick.
Perfect. Hey, we just want to let you know that this is a joke. This is all a joke, and we actually do have mission organizations that we do care for, and it'll be linked down below. Also, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel.
Yes, because the more you like and the more you subscribe, the more it allows us to make more videos. And if you didn't like this one, you didn't think this one was funny, then if you subscribe, we'll try to make better things.
Every Wednesday we come out with stuff, and every Friday we drop a podcast called Ninjas Are Butterflies.
It's very funny.
It's very funny.
It's like a podcast is like, it's just things you hear. It's the thing you can watch it too sometimes.
Yeah.
It's really good.
So make sure to like and subscribe, and that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Okay.
The Book of Judges. So remember, after Joshua led the tribes of Israel into the Promised Land, he called them to be faithful to their covenant with God by obeying the commands of the Torah. And if they do this, they will show all the other nations what God is like. So Judges begins with the death of Joshua and basically tells the story of Israel's total failure. The book's name comes from the type of leaders Israel had in this period. Before they had any kings, the tribes were all governed by these judges. Now, don't think of a courtroom. These were regional, political, military leaders, more like a tribal chieftain. And you need to be warned, the book of Judges is very disturbing and violent. It tells the tragic tale of Israel's moral corruption, of its bad leadership, and basically how they become no different than the Canaanites. But this sad story is also meant to generate hope for the future, and you can see this in how the book's designed. There's a large introduction that sets the stage for Israel's failure as they don't drive out the remaining Canaanites. Then the large main section of the book has stories about the growing corruption of Israel's judges, and the progression here shows how Israel's leaders go from pretty good to okay to bad to worse. The concluding section is really disturbing and shows the corruption of the people of Israel as a whole. So let's dive in and we can explore each part a bit more. The opening section begins with the tribes of Israel in their territories in the Promised Land. And while Joshua defeated some key Canaanite towns, there was still a lot of land to be taken and lots of Canaanites living in those areas. And so chapter 1 gives a long list of Canaanite groups and towns that Israel just failed to drive out from the land. Now, remember, the whole point of driving out the Canaanites was to avoid their moral corruption and their way of worshiping the gods through child sacrifice. God had called Israel to be a holy people, and that does not happen. Chapter 2 describes how Israel just moved in alongside the Canaanites and adopted all their cultural and religious practices. And it's right here that the story stops. For nearly a whole chapter, the narrator gives us an overview of everything that's about to happen in the body of the book. This part of Israel's history, the narrator says, was a series of cycles moving in a downward spiral. So Israel became like the Canaanites, and so they would sin against God. So God would allow them to be conquered and oppressed by the Canaanites, and eventually the Israelites would see the error of their ways and repent. So God would raise up a deliverer, a judge from among Israel who would defeat the enemy and bring about an era of peace. But eventually Israel would sin again, and it would all start over. This cycle provides the literary design and flow for the next main section of the book. It gets repeated for each of the 6 main judges whose stories are told here. Now, the stories of the first 3 judges, Othniel, Ehud, and Deborah, they are epic adventures. They're also extremely bloody stories. Either the judge themselves or people who help the judge, they defeat their enemies and deliver the people of Israel. The stories about the next 3 judges are longer, and they focus in on the character flaws of the judges, which get increasingly worse. So Gideon, he begins pretty well. He's a coward of a man, but he eventually comes to trust that God can save Israel through him. And so he defeats a huge army of Midianites with only 300 men carrying torches and clay pots. But Gideon has a nasty temper, and he murders a bunch of fellow Israelites for not helping him in his battle. And then it all goes downhill from there. He makes an idol from the gold that he won in his battles. And then after he dies, all Israel worships the idol as a god, and the cycle begins again. The next main judge is Jephthah, who's something of a mafia thug living up in the hills. And when things get really bad for Israel, the elders come to him begging for his help. And Jephthah was a very effective leader. He won lots of battles against the Ammonites, but he was so unfamiliar with the God of Israel, he treats him like a Canaanite god. He vows to sacrifice his daughter if he wins the battle. This tragic story, it shows just how far Israel has fallen. They no longer know the character of their own God, which leads to murder and to false worship. The last judge, Samson, is by far the worst. His life began full of promise, but he has no regard for the God of Israel. He was promiscuous, violent, and arrogant. He did win brutally strategic victories over the Philistines, but only at the expense of his own integrity, and his life ends in a violent rush of mass murder. Now, a quick note here. You'll notice a repeated theme in the main section of the book, that at key moments, God's Spirit will empower each of these judges to accomplish these great acts of deliverance. Now, the fact that God uses these really screwed up people doesn't mean he endorses all or even any of their decisions. God is committed first and foremost to saving his people, but all he has to work with is these corrupt leaders. And so work with them he does. This whole section is designed to show just how bad things have gotten. You can't even tell the Israelites and the Canaanites apart anymore, and that's just the leaders. The final section shows Israel as a whole hitting bottom. There are 2 tragic stories here, and they are not for the faint of heart. They're structured by this key line that gets repeated 4 times at the close of the book. In those days, Israel had no king, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. The first story is about an Israelite named Micah who builds a private temple to an idol, and that gets plundered by a private army sent from the tribe of Dan. So they come and they steal everything, and then they go and burn down the peaceful city of Laish and murder all of its inhabitants. It's a horrifying story. When Israel forgets its God, might makes right. The final story of the book is even worse. It's a shocking tale of sexual abuse and violence, which all leads to Israel's first civil war. It's very disturbing. And that's the point. These stories are meant to serve as a warning. Israel's descent into self-destruction is the result of turning away from the God who loves them and saved them out of slavery in Egypt. And now Israel needs to be delivered again from themselves. The only glimmer of hope in this story is found in this repeated line in the last part of the book. It actually forms the last sentence of the story. Israel has no king. And so the stage is set for the following books to tell the origins of King David's family, the book of Ruth, and also the origins of kingship itself in Israel, the book of 1 Samuel. But the story of Judges has value as a tragedy. It's a sobering explanation of the human condition, and ultimately it points out the need for God's grace to send a king who will rescue his people. And that's the book of Judges.
All right, so tonight we are kicking off the book of Judges. So if you don't have a Bible with you or on your phone, we have Bibles in the back. Go ahead and go grab one real quick. I'll give you time. We're going to pick up in Judges 2. That's where we're going to be starting today, is Judges 2. So we wrapped up the book of Joshua, and the book of Joshua is talking about the Israelites' conquest of Canaan. And so Canaan is a land that is promised to Abraham way back in the book of Genesis. Then 400 to 500 years pass, and now they have left Egypt, they've wandered the desert, and now they have taken the land of Canaan. And now we are in the book of Judges, where Israel has seemingly forgotten who their God is and what their God has done to keep them alive, to keep them flourishing, and how he's been faithful to them. Now, Judges 2 opens talking about a cycle that Israel will go through. A cycle of sin, punishment, repentance, salvation, and peace that continues over and over again, not just through the book of Judges, but through all of Israel's history. And now it's easy to look at this cycle and say, how stupid are they? It's incredibly easy to look at the cycle that they go through and go, how dumb is that? Now, need I remind you, this people, these are just a couple generations away from their grandparents and parents leaving Egypt in miraculous ways. And yet they fall into this. So we're in Judges 2. That's where we're at right now. Now the angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim, and he said, I brought you up from Egypt and brought you into the land that I swore to give your fathers. I said, I will never break my covenant with you, and you shall make no covenant with the inhabitants of this land. You shall break down their altars, but you have not obeyed my voice. What is this you have done? So now I will say, I will not drive them out before you, but they shall become thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be a snare to you. As soon as the angel of the Lord spoke these words, all the people of Israel, the people lifted up their voices and wept, and they called the name of that place Bochim, and they sacrificed
there to the Lord. When Joshua dismissed the people of Israel went into his inheritance to take possession of the land, and the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua, who had seen all the great work that the Lord had done for Israel. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110 years old. And they buried him within the boundaries of the inheritance of Timnath-Heres, in the hill country of Ephraim, north of the mountain of Gaash. And all that generation also were gathered to the fathers, and arose, also were gathered to their fathers. And there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel. And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and served the Baals, or Baals, depends on how you would pronounce it. And they abandoned the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. They went after other gods and bowed down to them, and they provoked the Lord to anger. They abandoned the Lord and served Baals and the Ashereth. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he gave them over to plunderers, who plundered them, and he sold them into the hand of their surrounding enemies, so that they can no longer withstand their enemies. Wherever they marched out, the hand of the Lord was against them for harm, as the Lord had warned and as the Lord had sworn to them, and they were in terrible distress. Then the Lord raised up judges who saved them out of the hand of those who plundered them. Yet they did not listen to the judges, for they whored after other gods and bowed down to them. They soon turned aside from the way in which their fathers had walked and who had obeyed the commandments of the Lord. And they did not do so. Whenever the Lord raised up judges for them, the hand of their enemies, from the hand of their enemies, all the days of the judge. For the Lord was moved to pity by their groaning because of those who afflicted and oppressed them. But whenever the judge died, they turned back and went and were more corrupt than their fathers, going after other gods, serving them and bowing down to them. They did not drop any of their practices or their stubborn ways. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. And he said, because this people has transgressed my covenant that I commanded their fathers and have not obeyed my voice, I will no longer drive out any of the nations that Joshua left when he died, in order to test Israel by them, whether they will take care to walk in the way of the Lord as their fathers did or not. So the Lord left those nations, not driving them out quickly, and he did not give them into the hand of Joshua. Now, these are the nations that the Lord left to test Israel by them. That is, all in Israel, who had not experienced all the wars in Canaan. It was only in order that the generations of the people of Israel might know war, to teach war to those who had not known it before. These are the nations, the 5 lords of the Philistines, and all the Canaanites, the Sidonites, the Hivites, who lived on Mount Lebanon, from Mount Baal-Hermon as far as Lebo-Hamath. They were for the testing of Israel, to know whether Israel would obey the commandments of the Lord, which he commanded their fathers by the hand of Moses. So the people of Israel lived among the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and their daughters they took to themselves for the wives, and their own daughters they gave to their sons, and they served their gods. And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. We're now in chapter 3, verse 7, so you guys can follow along. They forgot the Lord their God and served Baals and the Ashereth. Therefore the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he sold them into the hand of the Cushan, I'm going to paraphrase it. Cushan, king of Mesopotamia. And the people of Israel served Cushan 8 years. But when the people of Israel cried out to the Lord raised up a deliverer for the people of Israel who saved them. Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. The Spirit of the Lord was upon him, and he judged Israel. He went out to war. And the Lord gave Cushan, king of Mesopotamia, into his hand, and his hand prevailed over Cushan, so the land had rest for 40 years. Then Othniel, the son of Kenaz, died. Now, we've seen the cycle, and now we see God's hand in the judges. Now, here's the issue. God doesn't have to send the judges. He doesn't have to send them on two bases. One, if Israel followed God like their fathers had, they wouldn't be necessary. And two, they, not following God, have caused this themselves. God doesn't have to take care of it. But instead, he sends the judges, and each one having to put up with the sins and rebellion that has already been committed. Each new cycle. Now, before we get into my favorite judge, this one is a lot of fun. We're going to get into this in a second. I want to point out how easy it is to look at this cycle that Israel goes through and think, they're stupid. Don't they know better? It's really easy to look at this cycle and go, they're so dumb. Don't they see the cycle they're stuck in? But why is it easy for us to say that about them, but we look at our own lives and not see it? We go through the exact same cycle. Granted, God isn't having to go to war every time we call out for help. But we all go through these same cycles over and over again. Like Israel forgot what God did in Egypt, we forget what God does on a daily basis. Am I right? So as we go through this, we read this cycle. Let this cycle be a warning. Yes, God will save. God will continue to save. But it is not our job to see how far we can go before God will save us. Now let's get into Ehud. Ehud is my favorite judge, mostly because this story is so outrageously bizarre. For those of you who have heard this story, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a ton of fun, okay? And the people of Israel, again, did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord strengthened Eglon, the king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He gathered himself the Ammonites and the Amalekites, and went and defeated Israel. And they took possession of the city of palms. And the people of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, 18 years. The people of Israel cried out to the Lord, and the Lord raised up for them a deliverer named Ehud, the son of Gera, the Benjamite, a left-handed man. Why is this important? Why? Okay. It's being put in the Bible for a reason. Very rarely in the Bible are there descriptors of people, right? We don't see, we're not reading a J.K. Rowling book, right? Not every character in the Bible is described. Like their physique, if it's described, there's reason for it, right? Why is it important that Ehud is left-handed, Emily? So left-handedness, period, is really rare. But typically, right-handed people would keep their weapon on their left because they would draw from their left, right? Okay, remember that as we keep going. The people of Israel sent tribute by him to Eglon, the king of Moab, and Ehud made for himself a sword with two edges, a cubit in length, and he bound it on his right thigh under his clothes. And he presented the tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. Now, Eglon was a very fat man. Again, if the author's describing it, it's important. What's important is this dude was fat. We got a left-handed guy and a fat guy, okay? Remember those two details. And when Ehud had finished presenting the tribute, he sent away the people who carried the tribute. But he himself turned back at the idols near Gilgal and said, I have a secret message for you, O king. And he commanded silence. And all his attendants went out from his presence. And Ehud came to him, and he was sitting alone in his cool roof chamber. And Ehud said, I have a message from God for you. And he arose from his seat. Ehud reached with his left hand and took the sword from his right thigh and thrust it into his belly. The hilt also went after the blade, and the fat closed over the blade. For he did not pull the sword out of his belly, and the dung came out. Then Ehud went out into the porch and closed the doors and the roof chambers behind him and locked them. When he had gone, the servants came, and when they came and saw that the doors of the roof chamber were locked, they thought, surely he is relieving himself in the closet of the cool chamber, and they waited until they were embarrassed. But when he did not open the doors of the roof chamber, they took the key and opened it, and there lay their Lord dead on the floor. Ehud escaped while they delayed, and he passed beyond the idols and escaped the Sariah. When he arrived, he sounded the trumpet in the hill country of Ephraim. Then the people of Israel went down with him from the hill country, and he was their leader. And he said to them, follow after me, for the Lord has given your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand. So they went down after him and seized the fords of the Jordan against the Moabites and did not allow anyone to pass over. And they killed at that time about 10,000 of the Moabites, all strong, able-bodied men. Not a man escaped. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest for 80 years. After him was Shamgar, the son of Anath, who killed 600 of the Philistines with an ox goad, and he also saved Israel. Now, we get into chapter 4, and this will be the last chapter we read for today. It's a story of Deborah and Barak. The people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died. The Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth. Oh my goodness. Can they not pick some easier names to read? Harosheth Hagoyim. Then the people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help. For he had 900 chariots of iron, and he oppressed the people of Israel cruelly for 20 years. Now Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapideth, was judging Israel at the time. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the people of Israel came up to her for judgment. She sent and summoned Barak, the son of Abinoam, from Kadesh Naphtali, and said to him, has not the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you, go, gather your men at Mount Tabor, taking 10,000 from the people of Naphtali and the people of Zebulun. And I will draw out Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you at the river Kishon with his chariots and his troops, and I will give him into your hand. Barak said to her, if you will go with me, I will go, but if you will not go with me, I will not go. And she said, I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will lead you to your glory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into your hand, into the hand of a woman. Then Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. And Barak called out Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and 10,000 men went up at his heels, and Deborah went with him. Now Heber the Kenite had separated from the Kenites, the descendant of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had pitched his tent as far as the oak of Zanim, which is near Kadesh. When Sisera was told Barak, the son of Abinoam, had gone up from Mount Tabor, Sisera called out his chariots, 900 chariots of iron, and all the men who were with him, from Harosheth-Hagoyim to the river of Kishon. And Deborah said to Barak, "Up, for this is the day in which the Lord has given Sisera into your hand. Does not the Lord go out before you?" So Barak went out from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. And the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and all his army before Barak by the edge of the sword. And Sisera got down from his chariot and fled away on foot. And Barak pursued the chariots and the army of Harosheth-Hagoyim. And all the army of Sisera fell by the edge of the sword. Not a man was left. But Sisera fled away on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Canaanite. For there was peace between Jabin the king of Hazor and the house of Heber the Canaanite. And Jael came out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me, do not be afraid." So he turned aside to her into the tent, and she covered him with a rug. And he said to her, "Please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty." So she opened a skin of milk and gave him a drink, covered him. And he said to her, "Stand at the opening of my tent. And if any man comes and asks you, 'Is anyone here?' say no." But Jael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg and took a hammer in her hand. Then she went softly to him and drove the peg into his temple until it went down into the ground while he was lying fast asleep from weariness, so he died. And behold, as Barak was pursuing Sisera, Jael went out to meet him and said, "Come, and I will show you the man whom you are seeking." So he went into her tent, and there lay Sisera dead with the tent peg in his temple. So on that day, God subdued Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the people of Israel. And the hand of the people of Israel pressed harder and harder against Jabin, the king of Canaan, until they destroyed Jabin, the king of Canaan. As the narrator in our video said, this is not nice stuff. This is gruesome and cringe, like gross stuff. But it is important to understand, one, this is God delivering his people out of the hands of those who are oppressing them. But the reason they're oppressing them is their own fault. And Sunday, as we go through 7 through 12, I think that's right, we're going to just continue to see this cycle. Gideon, Jephthah, Samson, all these judges are going to fail. These next 3 judges are going to be worse than these 3. They're going to have issue after issue because Israel will continue to fall again